This is your host, Jean Kratzer, with this week's program, Exploring Santa Cruz. And my guest today is LizAnne Jensen. She was with me on the 16th of September when we had an earlier program talking about the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County and the campaign that they have started designed to help people harden their homes in the face of the possibilities of wildfires. And as we've all just gone through this experience with PG&E cutting our power, I think that's focused people's minds a bit. And that's one reason that I've brought LizAnne back, because she has created something fabulous. And I'm going to let her describe it to you, but it's a brochure and it's called Prepared, Not Scared. We're going to start by giving everyone who's listening to us a chance to download it from the web. Then you can follow along with some of the things that we're going to be looking at, and I think it'll make more sense to you. So, LizAnne, could you tell people how they can get it from the web?
Hi, Jean. It's nice to be back here with you. If people would like to download the document from our website, the website address is firesafesantacruz.org. And when you get there, there's a link to the resource section, and the first choice will be the Prepared, Not Scared brochure.
Great. And do please go straight to your computers and download that, because I think you'll find it really helpful to actually be seeing this as we're talking about it. LizAnne, while they're downloading it, perhaps you could give us an update on what's happening with the project to help people harden their homes. I know there's a lot of activities going on now that hadn't yet started when we spoke the last time. So if you could just bring us up to date.
Sure. And also this information is available on our website as well if you're interested in attending one of the presentations we'll be doing. The presentations are designed to help homeowners and building professionals to make homes better able to withstand wildfires. We'll teach people how to improve personal and structure safety and some do's and don'ts regarding the critical 5 feet immediately surrounding a home, which is where your home is most vulnerable to fires getting started.
Okay, so that's just a brief update, and if you go to the website, you'll see the dates for all these activities, and you can sign up and reserve a place. Now, going to Prepared, Not Scared, LizAnne, you were the one who wrote this, and I'd like you to explain why.
Well, if you've ever been through a wildland fire, the first thing that happens is that you begin to panic, and as you're trying to get ready to leave your home, I found myself running from room to room saying, wait, I should grab this. No, wait, I should grab this, and running to another room. And I ended up wasting a lot of very precious time not really thinking through what it was I needed to do or needed to grab if I needed to get out of there in a hurry. So fortunately, our home did not burn in the Martin fire, but what I did is I started looking at lists that might be available on things to do to be better prepared. And really over the last 10 years, I've been culling lists and putting things together to come up with a guide that made sense to me on how to prepare to evacuate in case there's a fire.
There's a lot on this guide. One of the things that makes it so valuable is that probably we, the ordinary people, would not have thought of unless we had been through the same kind of an experience. Could you give us an idea of how this is organized and how it works? And then we'll go into some of the remarkable things about it that we probably wouldn't have thought of if we were just trying to do it on our own.
Well, if you're downloading it off our website, the first page, there's a sheet that you can fill out that you leave taped to your front window if you evacuate. It has your name, how to get a hold of you, the number of residents who live at the house, the date and time you left, where you're intending to go, and you can also include information about where your propane shutoff is and things like that. Firefighters who have this information, oftentimes after the neighborhood is evacuated, they'll stay in a neighborhood to look for ember fires and other things. And if they have this information, this is really helpful for them in documenting, knowing that people are safe. If they see one of these in the windows and know people have left, they can move through the neighborhood more quickly, checking to make sure everyone is safe. So that's the first page of the document. The second page is a sheet that's a standalone page that you can actually take and print out and put up on your refrigerator. And it's a checklist of things you can do to be better prepared around your home to make it specifically about fires. There's a section on things you can do today. And some of that is pretty easy. It's sign up for some alerts so that you can get notified if there's a fire or other disasters happening. Another recommendation is to always keep your gas tank at least half full. If you're evacuating and you get piled up in a line of cars waiting to get out and you run out of gas, not only are you endangering yourself, but you're endangering people behind you. And as we all know from the recent outage, ATM machines can go down. So having a little envelope full of $1 bills, $5 bills, $10 bills, and $20 bills is a really good idea. And another really, really important thing to do is set up a out-of-town contact, somebody out of the state preferably. You give them a list of all your important people who will want to know that you're safe. And then when you're evacuating, you call one person and give that person your list of contacts, and they will contact everyone else on your list, leaving you free to take care of really important stuff you're trying to do right then. So that's on the what you can do today list. There's several other items that are good advice, and they're things you can do at your leisure and get that up as you have the time.
This is really valuable information because we wouldn't all think of this on our own. We have also the go bags, and everybody knows that you need a go bag. We kind of have an idea of the sorts of things we put in it, some of the really obvious things. But then there's other things on this list like have a whistle, keep it on a chain. And of course, you want extra keys for your house, extra keys for your car, an extra pair of glasses. My gosh, what if you lose or break your glasses? We know we need flashlights and batteries. We're all going to get those ahead of time, right? Like we did before PG&E cut off our power and we went to try and buy some batteries and found there weren't any batteries. We're going to do this ahead of time. And our medicines, extra medicine from the doctor that we have ahead of time, all of this in the go bag. There's a whole list here of things. Some of the things you'll have thought of and think, oh yeah, of course, I know about that. Other things you won't have thought of. So that's another reason why this is such a valuable list. Then there are the things you can do to protect your home and your property, but we're not going to go over those at any length. One, because we went over a lot of it the last time, and two, because all of these great activities that are set up and that you're invited to go to are going to go over that. So, LizAnne, let's go on to the next set of things that we probably wouldn't have thought of.
Well, one thing is if you do have to evacuate, it's suggested that you wear cotton clothing or wool clothing. The reason for that is if a branch comes down the road, you have to get out and drag it out of the way. If you're wearing a synthetic fabric and embers are blowing, it can melt or actually catch fire. The other thing is if you're evacuating, put on a pair of sturdy, heavy-soled shoes. You do not want to be outside when embers are blowing around if you're in flip-flops. There's a few more items on there, but just some things to think about as you're preparing to evacuate.
These suggestions that when you are getting ready, that you have a wool blanket with you, that you have a woolen hat with you. These are things that no matter what circumstances you end up in, you can use to protect you. And also there was mention of setting out some tools that you could take with you, tools that can be left behind so that the firefighters can use them if they need to.
Yes, if you have the time, if you're evacuating, never hurts to have a chainsaw, pry bar, bolt cutters, or a tow strap in your car.
Everybody's got those,
yeah.
Of course.
If you live in the mountains, you may well have them.
And if you don't?
You want to be following someone who does.
Who does, exactly. Okay, so what happens when you get an order to evacuate, or if you've lost your power like we did the other day, you may not actually get that. So how do you know when to evacuate?
The earlier you can evacuate, the better. If large-scale fire equipment is trying to get in, bulldozers and big fire engines, and you're trying to get out and it's a small, narrow road, there can be blockages and delays for you getting out and for them getting in. So fire is nothing to mess with, and if you can have your checklist, you've got yourself all your things together, go then, and know that your home has been prepared to the best of your ability and you've done everything you can, and then just get out and stay safe.
You told me a story a little while ago about a lady down in Santa Monica. Could you tell that for our listeners?
Yes, this has stuck with me forever, and it's one of my inspirations for putting this list together. I was talking to a woman who lived down actually in Malibu, and there was a fire burning across the canyon, Santa Ana winds blowing, and she and her girlfriend sat on their lounge chairs, made a cocktail, and watched the fire. And they sat there for a couple hours watching it. Wind shifted, and the fire roared up the hill towards her house, and she got out with the shirt on her back. If you think about those 2 hours that she had before the fire got to her, there were a whole lot of things she could have been doing to make her life after the fire, which did destroy her home, a lot easier to manage afterwards. So we do have on this a fire threat imminent, preparing to go. It's a section. We've tried to arrange it in order of priority depending on how much time you have, of things you can do. Like one example is park your vehicles in the driveway facing out.
That's great.
And then put your keys in your pocket. Another thing you might not think about is it may be hot. Do not leave your windows down. You do not want embers blowing into your car and setting on fire before you can get out of there. So there's a suggestion to roll up your windows and keep your trunk lid shut until you actually are trying to put things in it. If you're leaving and you have the time, you can shut your fireplace and wood stove flues. You would want to turn off fans. Those would just stir the air if any fire got in and make it burn faster. And another recommendation people might not think about is put a metal ladder up outside the house so that if firefighters need to get up on your roof, they have quick access to it. So those are some of the things you can do when you're preparing to leave, but you haven't actually had the call to leave yet.
And there's also the point that you want to make your house one of the houses that when the firefighters have to choose, they'll decide is most feasible to save. What are some of the things that you need to do so that when they have to make a very quick choice, they'll choose to protect your house?
Well, firefighters will try and save every house they possibly can, but if push does come to shove, if your home has been prepared, for example, if you've pushed all your patio furniture as far from your house as you can, barbecues with propane tanks, you've pushed them away, you've laid out garden hose, you've laid out shovels, rakes, pickaxes, hose. Those are things that firefighters are going to see, and they know this is somebody who's prepared, and it'll make it easier for them to run hose around your house to defend it if they don't have to try and thread it through a picnic table or over a lounge chair. So any of those steps that you can do make that split-second decision and the speed at which they can react that much better.
And of course, these are things that you do when you know that you're going to be leaving. You're not going to spend your whole time with everything taken away from your house.
No, that would be way down the list if you have time and the threat is not imminent. What my husband and I do is if there's a fire anywhere in the county, we use it as a time to do an exercise. And we now have done it like 3 or 4 times, and we're pretty fast at it. We can do it, and we also found stumbling blocks and things that were problems that we hadn't thought of. So if the fire is in the area, it doesn't hurt to practice some of these steps just so that when the fire is coming up the hillside near you, you're not in complete panic. You have some muscle memory about things you can do to prepare and get out safely.
When you and your husband were running these drills and began to come up against things you hadn't expected, were there some major things that you said, oh my goodness, it's a good thing we practiced, because if we'd done this without knowing?
Well, one thing that it's kind of funny. We live up in Bonnie Doon, and up there we lose power frequently. And as with most mountain residents, we've got a generator. And an aha moment came to me just the other day that we should have a fire extinguisher out within reach of our generator. So it's a moving target. You always are learning new things and thinking of new things you can do better.
So you've got us up to the point where you know that you're going to go, and you're starting to move out the door and get things ready, close your garage door. And I remember one thing people said is, figure out how to close your garage door when there's no power. Because you want to leave that door closed, right? So the fire can't just go in.
That's right. And we did a tour of some of the Santa Rosa fires after they occurred, and a fair number of homes were lost as people fled in the middle of the night and left their garage doors open because the fire just went right in through the garage of their house. So, if you can do some of these steps, like, a fire's coming, go through, make sure all your windows are shut, your skylights are closed, your chimney is shut down, things like that. Those are all great ideas. But when you come to go to evacuate, we also have a nice little checklist there of things to do. Now, this is a separate page in the downloadable version, and this last page we suggest that people just tuck it in their glove compartment or on the visor of their car, so that if push comes to shove, it's right there with instructions, step-by-step things to do as you're actually beginning to evacuate.
What are some of those most important things? We obviously are not, in any case, going through the entirety of any of the lists, but just kind of the highlights of what people need to know.
Well, the first thing, if you have a minute, put on your cotton or wool clothing, your sturdy boots, have an N95 mask. Those are available at places like CVS or other drugstores. You don't have to put it on, but have it in your car in case you need it. Bring extra water in case you're stuck. The air can get really hot and smoky, so having extra water is good. Put your pets into their transports and get them ready to leave. Let's see, tune your radio. We have the list of emergency radio stations so you can have your radio and get up-to-date announcements. The other thing we recommend is as you're leaving, honk your horn a whole bunch, because some of your neighbors may be still sleeping, may not know. If you're in a hurry to get out, at least as you're leaving, honk and hopefully wake them. If you can't do a phone tree or you can't call out, if there's not time, at least as you're going, lay on the horn so that you're alerting your neighbors that there could be a problem if they haven't heard already.
That's a very good point, and it also raises the question of perhaps encouraging as many people as possible to maybe have some kind of arrangement with their nearest neighbors, that if any one of them is aware of danger, that you'll go and wake them up if need be, if you have the time, just to make sure that nobody's left there sleeping when they really ought to be getting out.
Yes, and that we have that's the very first step in our fire threat is imminent section. If you know there's a fire, you've been alerted, you're not having to evacuate yet, is alert all your household members and your neighbors of the threat. This honking would also kind of be if it was the middle of the night and fire was on your doorstep and you were getting out. If you can remember and honk to warn your neighbors, that gives them a chance too.
Right. If you can't do anything else, you can at least do that.
Right.
And then there's some pretty scary sections that come up, which kind of deal with the sorts of situations you don't even want to think about. And if you have seen the videos of the Paradise Fire, you kind of think, if that happened to me, there's no way I'd make it through. And yet, in these 3 sections, you have some suggestions as to how you can survive the impossible. So maybe you could go through those. The first one is, what happens if you're trapped in your vehicle? I mean, I have nightmares about being on Highway 17 or Highway 9 and it all gets blocked. So what happens if you're in your vehicle and you can't go forward or backwards? What do you do?
Well, the first thing I would say is that's the reason to evacuate early. And I can't encourage people enough that that is your best option. These other options are not good ones, but it does give you some clues of things you can do should you find yourself in that terrible situation. And if you're trapped in your car, you've got your N95 mask, you've got your wool and cotton clothing on. It's going to be cooler in your car than it is outside, possibly even 3 times hotter outside than it is in your car. So if you stay inside the vehicle, if you can, it's safer there than being out in the environment. You would want to lie on the floor, cover yourself with your wool blanket and your wool cap, and remain there until the fire is past.
Should you use some of that extra water and moisten your cap and moisten your...
Not with steam.
No?
Nope. You want to just cover yourself with the wool blanket and the hat and your N95 mask and get down as low in the car as you can.
And talk about how long it takes for the fire to get past you, because that's an important factor.
Well, you can't say for absolutely certain. It depends on the wind speed and other things, but generally a fire front will pass in about 10 or 15 minutes on average. It could be faster, it could be slower, but that's the time really that it usually takes to go through.
So if you can survive for those 10 or 15 minutes, you've got a chance.
And again, I'm going to say get out early is your best chance. This is not a scenario you want to find yourself in.
When we're talking about getting out early, how do you know where to go?
That is a really good point. And the thing is, you want to think it through now when it's calm and peaceful. I live in Bonnie Doon. There are times when the university is letting out and there are thousands of cars leaving the campus. That is not a time you want to try and go down and leave campus that way. If you live in the San Lorenzo Valley, if the high school and elementary school are living out, that's going to create some bottlenecks. Think of where you live and what things might impact you. If you can think of more than one way out, that's good. You should practice those routes. And say a tree's down, do you have an alternative street you could go down? Think of it ahead of time, not during the course of the event itself, if at all possible.
Yeah, and practicing those routes, that's pretty important, isn't it? And having alternatives if you can. Although in Santa Cruz, there aren't always that many alternatives, so
yep.
That is something you really want to think about ahead of time.
It is.
And then that brings us to this next scarier part, which is you don't ever want to be on foot, but if you are, what do you do?
Well, let's not even go to that one. It's on our list.
Okay.
That is not the one that's the one you definitely don't want to find yourself in.
Actually, there was one story that came out of the Paradise Fire where apparently there was a man who was blocked in his car. And I'm not saying this is what people should do. This is just a story I heard. And he got out of his car and he saw a fox. And he followed the fox. And the fox got him to, I think, a ditch where he was able to lie down and he lived. But we can't always count on the foxes.
No. But again, the wool cap, the wool blanket, all of those would be helpful to carry with you if you found yourself in that situation.
And then if you weren't able to get out at all, which is your last section here, and if you end up having to stay in your house because you can't get out, then what should you be thinking?
Well, you want all your windows, your doors, your skylights closed. You want to have an N95 mask, a hard hat. If you have fire extinguishers in your home, bring them into the room with you. Put wet towels across the base of your doors to keep smoke from coming in. And stay low and try and avoid smoke inhalation. There are more steps on here. There are a lot of good tips on here on things you can do to make yourself safer.
Well, I hope in this brief review that we've managed to live up to the name of the brochure, which is Prepared, Not Scared, because actually some of the stuff in it is kind of scary. But the message is clear. Be as prepared as you can. And that involves not just the things that we've read off on the list, but also the whole process of trying to prepare your land, your home, well ahead of time to make it less vulnerable to fires. And because that involves an awful lot, you had some really good advice about how do you do this when there's so much to do in terms of hardening your house. How do you go about it? Where do you start?
With any of this, do what you can as you can do it. You cannot do all the steps you need to take in 3 months, 6 months, or a year. We've been working on this for 10 years. There's still things we have to check on our list, but 10 years down the line, our home is a lot safer than it was when we started 10 years ago.
Thank you so much for all of this. I do hope people have either downloaded this brochure or, having heard about it now, will go and download it. It's a great contribution that you've made to the safety of all of us, and thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
This is KSQD Santa Cruz, KSQD 90.7 FM, and ksqd.org, streaming on the web.